This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
No one's going to tell Mike this, so I'm going to say it. Star Wars is just fantasy. Star Trek, on the other hand, is based in science and reality. But, I will concede this, that Mike G, he's got the force, Mr. President.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a WCNY podcast about power and politics. With the state and congressional primaries less than a month away, the trajectory of these races has largely been set in stone. But what if candidates and their campaigns could demonstrably alter the facts on the ground? Armed with a magic wand, what would they want to help improve their odds? A missing endorsement, maybe? A salient campaign issue? Maybe some friends to rally around their campaign? For this exercise, we're joined in the studio by two campaign veterans, and they are State Senator James Skoufis, an Orange County Democrat who, if you hadn't heard, has regularly outperformed the top of his ticket. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
This is my preferred show of yours to be on. Thanks for having me back.
I appreciate that. And we're also joined by Alex Elmasri, a Vice President of Operations and Growth for the Parkside Group, who is the former Executive Director of the New York State Democratic Senate Campaign Committee. Thanks for joining us in the studio, Alex.
Thank you. And also James Skoufis is campaign manager when he won the state Senate race and overperformed the top of the ticket.
Well, yeah, I was curious. What is the relationship between you two guys?
Alex was as he just said, my campaign manager in 2018. He helped rope me into being a candidate prior to coming over to run the operation, and then he became bigger and better things subsequent to that victory.
How was he as a person to work for?
He was great. He would do a lot of stuff on his own, which is a campaign manager exactly what you want.
Is it? Is that a campaign
there was
manager?
a little sarcasm there, but it made the race fun. I would say we had a lot of fun with various tricks and things that would happen after hours.
Was it a hard sell to get him to run?
It was. I think prior...
the cycle before it was.
Sure.
Yeah, prior to my time when Senator Bill Larkin, rest in peace, was still there. This was prior to me, but, Loretta Moore, who's been on the show, friend of the pod, he failed at getting Skoufis to run, but I succeeded.
But as we learned on the floor of the Senate this week, according to Senator Gianaris, at a ripe young age of being a town official, you were declaring your plans for state Senate.
I forgot about that. I didn't realize it was his first candidate meeting since becoming DSCC chair. But yeah, I was on the town board. My interest in running for state Senate, the accumulation of that interest was that one meeting.
Sure.
And then many years later, I wound up running, obviously.
And you didn't have a bottle of champagne stored up somewhere in case one day you got elected to state Senate, right?
I can't say I do. That's a Colin Schmidt special, as some of your most loyal listeners know.
So the premise of today's conversation is make-believe, but you guys have both worked on campaigns, and I guess have there ever been experiences where you were grasping at straws or just desperately hoping and praying for some sort of miracle?
No.
So if not in a personal capacity, I know you've worked campaigns for other candidates, so have you had experiences in those campaigns, maybe where you were an underdog and you were saying, please, the Lord and Savior of all things political, can you deliver me this XYZ?
I've run one campaign before as a non-candidate, as a campaign manager. That was in 2010, the assembly race that I wound up winning 2 years later. So I guess in that regard, maybe it was a good thing that we didn't win. But we lost by 1 percentage point against, you might remember the name, Nancy Calhoun,
sure,
who was a longtime Republican assemblywoman from Orange County. And it was a DAC race, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we had a lot of fun on that race. Nancy Calhoun was irascible on a good day, and then she was ran out of town 2 years later by her own party. She lost her renomination at the convention. But I can't think of anything specifically during that campaign where we were like praying to the political gods. But certainly on election day, we were hoping for the best, and we fell a little bit short.
Alex, what about you?
You're always hoping for more endorsements, more money. But like once you take a step back, especially if you lose, once all the dust settles, it's hard to be like, oh, if we had another $100,000, or if it's a multi-million-dollar race, another $1 million. Campaigns are comprised of a multitude of things, and it's very rare one thing helps. I think going the opposite way, sometimes when there's one negative, it can kill a campaign, but that's usually outside of your control.
Well, before you undermine the premise of this episode anymore, let's get right into it. And we both have identified races where, if we could give someone one missing ingredient to help them, what would that be? We'll give the privileges of the floor to the senators. So what do you want to start with?
It's kind of you.
Yes.
Let's talk about New York 17, which Alex has some personal experience former experience. And so you've got this muddied Democratic primary to take on Michael Lawler, who graced us with his presence in the Capitol yesterday.
Cursing up a storm, too.
Yeah, I saw that. I
was scandalized.
Are we allowed to curse on this show?
Sure.
Okay.
This is a family-friendly podcast. I will not be
go
cursing.
Anywhere. Yeah.
So you've got two front runners. There's a third candidate that the far left faction supports, but the two primary front runners are Kate Conley, who's a West Point grad, recently moved back to the district to run for the seat, and you've got Beth Davidson, who's a Rockland County legislator. And the one variable that I would hone in on, that look, we're going to find out in the next few weeks who's the beneficiary of what will amount to probably 8, 9, 10% of the primary electorate vote, and that's where does the Hasidic community in Rockland County go? And so they're all vying for it. In particular, the two front runners, and then you've got this sort of you've got this interesting asterisk next to how this all unfolds, because Mike Lawler is as close as one gets with the Hasidic community.
Are you a close second?
Not in Rockland County.
Okay. Touche.
And I am hearing rumors, perhaps Alex has heard some rumors as well, that Mike Lawler is looking to interfere in the Democratic primary and guide the Hasidic community to whomever his preferred opponent is
interfere
for the general election.
Negative connotations.
You
help
think?
Inform, advise,
sure.
recommend.
And so, look, there's a good chance that this primary is decided by fewer than 10 percentage points, and that this bloc will make the difference. And so they're both vying for it, and I think they're both desperate to have it, and it could be the margin of victory.
Yeah, and I think everyone's paying attention to these New York City primaries, which are interesting. But this is definitely an extremely important race. If we want to take back the House, make Hakeem Jeffries leader, I would say this race has actually been under the radar for the most part. And there's a huge battle going on. It was a larger field, as the senator alluded to. I was working with Peter Chatsky. He has since dropped out.
Sorry for your loss.
It's okay.
Is he still paying his bills?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what really matters here.
Hopefully they're all paid by now.
Yeah.
hard to fundraise once you stop running.
But he was a self-funder. But I would argue it's definitely been under the radar, and for kind of, if not one of the most important races in New York, if not the country, there should be more attention paid to this race. And to the senator's point, Lawler is probably the most tactile politician, either Democrat or Republican, in the state. And the fact that everyone is thinking not, oh, what's Beth going to do to get the block, or what's Kate going to do to get the block, but where's Lawler going to put the block, just shows that we're playing on his field and on our field. Makes it all the more interesting. I think I have to shout out Timmy at the Judge Street Journal for being the only one consistently covering this race. If I was Beth's team, I think at this point you just need money, and they're just very much behind in the money. They have a good message, they have good negatives on Kate, but she's up on $2 million on broadcast right now. It's just overwhelming, and it's very hard to make up that
And there's a geographic divide in this primary too. You've got Rockland, who's Beth is doing well on the western side of the river, and you've got Kate, who's probably overperforming on the eastern side of the river in Westchester. Then you've got all the indivisible groups in Westchester that are kind of doing their own thing for this third candidate, Effie, who Lawler tried to kick off of the Democratic line, and that kind of elevated her in this discourse. And he did that, to Alex's point, very tactically in order to keep her on the WFP line and lock her into that third ballot so that the general election would be split. And so it's a very convoluted race, and to Alex's point, the general election is critical. My guess is with Calais, with the redistricting wars tilting a little bit towards Republicans' favor following Virginia being undone by their state Supreme Court. If the Democrats are going to be the majority, which we all certainly here at this end of the table are rooting for, it's probably going to be by a single-digit number of House seats, and any one could be the determining factor. And this is one of the very, very few in the entire country that Harris won and that Biden won. And so, Michael Lawler has been able to survive because he is, by definition, an operative. Literally, that's what he was doing for a living prior to becoming exactly, and he's carried over that political skill set to Congress. But this is an absolutely critical race, and it starts with what happens 3 weeks from now.
Well, Alex, would you like to do any sort of wand waving in NY17, or do you want to pick another race to tune on to?
If I was Beth Davidson, I would ask for $2 million in outside money to go on broadcast.
I think that could be a recurring one for a lot of races. Is there a limit, though, where the money
if we want to move on to another race,
sure.
CD12, right? This is the Jerry Nadler seat. I think at this point, if anyone had an additional $2 million, if you're Michael Asher, Alex Boris, probably doesn't make a difference. Considering, I think Bloomberg said he was going to spend $5 million. I think we're over $5 million in the Bloomberg IE spend. I think anti Alex Boris AI money, we're approaching $5 million. That's without candidate money, without other union outside support. So when you're approaching $10 million in the most
returns.
And this is the media market where the electorate is probably the most educated in the country, right? I'm involved in a couple assembly races there, and we just did some polling, and 82% of the people who responded to the poll were naming the mail that they got, which is unheard of, right? These are people who are paying attention. So you have diminishing returns at a certain point, especially in the electorate.
So if you are one of the candidates in NY12, is there anything that you are hoping and praying for if you're Michael Asher or Alex Boris or a Kennedy relative?
We're starting to see a little bit, and Alex Boris has been doing this in the last week. I think it's a little coalescing, right? I think a lot of people have been staying on the sidelines, whether that's labor or some local electeds. I think, people are hedging their bets in both directions. So if I was either Alex Boris or Michael Asher, I want some coalescing, whether that's lefty groups, whether that's labor, but something to kind of define you as the front runner candidate.
And what's going to be interesting is, and you've started to see this, Schlossberg has begun to dip in the polling that's been publicly released over the past several weeks, month or so. He came in with sort of celebrity status, and a lot of that was his polling was just sort of name ID and that status. And so to the extent that he continues to dip over the next few weeks, I think it's going to be very interesting to see where those former Schlossberg voters wind up, whether it's with Lasher or Boris. And so if I'm one of them, I'm paying close attention to trying to win over some of those Schlossberg votes that are probably very softly supporting him.
Well, I was curious about whether you think those were actually people who were going to turn up, or they were just people who, hey, I know that name. Yeah, that's the one I am going to tell this pollster that I'm interested in, and that response isn't really worth that much because maybe they're not actually going to show up, or maybe we should have more faith in public pollsters that have weeded out the likely voters.
They're screening. I mean, Alex and I have both engaged in a lot of polling over the years, and so the screening is usually pretty good.
Even for primaries?
I've never run a primary, so that's a better question asked for Alex. But at least in general, the screening is good, and you model it off of previous cycles that you think are comparable to the environment. But to Alex's point before, which is correct, this is one of, if not the most highly educated, most informed primary electorates in the country. And so folks who are taking the time to answer these polls, my guess is, yeah, they're probably being screened if they get past the screening, and they're probably going to vote.
Polling is only a snapshot in time. It's not who are you going to vote for in 2 months, even though that's the question. People answer polls as in who are they going to vote for today. They just knew Schlossberg's name, but they also were probably, if they were voting that afternoon, going to go vote for Schlossberg, right? But that doesn't mean that translate a month or 2 months from now after a campaign is run, which, by the way, is the point of running campaigns. You change the dynamics of the race and you change the dynamics of the polling, and when we see polling shift, you know someone is running a campaign and a good campaign on the ground.
Let's shift completely out of the New York City area, and I want to turn to NY21 because this is a race where we think about the impact of endorsements, and I think they can often be overrated, but there are some endorsements, because not all endorsements are created equal, that do matter. And in NY21, I think Donald Trump's endorsement is still a big deal in a GOP primary, and if he had a magic wand, I know Assemblyman Robert Smullen would wave it to get the president on board with him. Maybe there's still a path for him to beat Anthony Constantino with all of the establishment institutional support he's built up, but an endorsement from the president would have really undercut the guy whose main reason for running is that he had a Donald Trump sign. So I think that is a clear one where rubbing a lamp or waving a wand, an endorsement from Trump is what Robert Smullen wishes he had. What do you guys think?
Smullen's toast.
Toast.
I see no path. I completely agree with you. Donald Trump's endorsement just took out John Cornyn in Texas. And it wasn't even close, by the way, sitting U.S. Senator for how many decades. And he got smoked. And so here you have an open seat. And the Republican Party is the Trump party. And regardless of what you think of Trump, he has done that, and he's been highly effective in effectuating that. And so in a place like the North Country, in a primary like that one, where neither candidate is probably super well known, at least out of the gate, Trump's endorsement carries the day. I think it's over.
I think what you say, though, about these candidates not necessarily being that well known in NY21 is a really important point, because Smullen is not some guy who represents vast swaths of the district. It's got like a small portion of it down in that southwest corner. I think it also helped that Anthony Constantino didn't like throw up on himself or try to have a fist fight with Robert Smullen during their one televised debate.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. Again, I think, everyone's paying attention to New York City, maybe mid-level attention to CD17, and then people just kind of joke online about the CD21 race. But there's something really interesting happening here. Is Smullen is definitely very, very angry at what is happening on the ground and with Constantino and taking it personally. You have this crazy thing where the Conservative Party, who would most likely be more Trump, is with Smullen. They're actually suing Constantino due to death threats. Smullen wouldn't even shake Constantino's hand. And while this is like fun and drama, it actually has real effects to what might happen in November, because a similar situation, like the senator was saying about WFP and Effie Phillips, if Constantino wins the primary, Smullen could still run on the conservative line in November. Now, there's no way he could win on the conservative line in November, but he could do this in order to make a point and to backstab Constantino. And there's clearly lots of bad blood with Smullen, the Conservative Party, and Constantino. And this would really give Democrats an opening to possibly win this district. There's a great candidate, Blake Gendabine. He has millions of dollars.
He's doing a lot of work in that sentence.
And let me say,
who did he vote for president in 2024, whatever it was, when you refused to say?
Well, the first time I was on your podcast, we talked about Blake Gendabine. You couldn't even pronounce his name back then.
No, but I learned how to say it. I'm spreading the gospel.
Smullen on the conservative line probably nets 6 to 10 percentage points.
Wow.
And in a blue wave year, it becomes a very interesting race.
Well, we saw that movie in 2009 when there was a special election, and that's how we got Bill Owens. Any other races that you guys are interested in that you want to talk about?
I've got one for you.
Please.
Let's go statewide.
I love it.
We've got a comptroller's primary.
Perfect.
Coming up in a few weeks. And if I'm one of the two challengers, in full disclosure, I've endorsed Tom DiNapoli, love Tom, the job he's doing. But if I'm one of his two challengers, who's still on the ballot, there was a third, I guess if I could wave a magic wand, I would love, just any institutional support, any, whether it's unions, whether it's the party or segments of the party. Simple matter of fact is, and I'm going to make up numbers here, but it's probably in the ballpark. If you're in a statewide primary like Tom DiNapoli is, and you have the full institutional support that he has, that probably accounts for his base. His floor is somewhere 30 to 40 percentage points, let's say. And given that there are two other opponents, they're going to slice up some of the rest. Tom's going to get some of the rest as well. But, with every organized labor union, with every party official, with virtually every elected official supporting DiNapoli, that creates a very sizable floor that becomes near insurmountable for two other candidates. Splitting the rest of that vote, the 60+%, with Tom, makes it almost insurmountable to overcome.
What if they rack up more cross endorsements with local
Assembly
village
members,
candidates?
yeah.
And I think they would love some more assembly candidates at this point, but that seems to be where their only hope and prayer of generating some excitement is. If you're Tom DiNapoli, if you are concerned about either of these two challengers, who are you more concerned about?
I don't know. What do you think, Alex? I don't know if I have an anscer to that.
I don't have an answer either. I think
because either campaign will clip this and then use it to say that you're, veteran.
I think they clipped me. They clipped me last time.
They did.
I think it was Raj.
Yep.
So I'm going to say Drew has a better chance this time, and that's kind of a cross endorsement. Will you go? But
spread it around.
If the true answer is Tom DiNapoli has the best chance. If I was them, I'd wave a magic wand and hope the other one would move out of state, so then I'm the only person on the ballot.
I will say Drew is the only one of them two who showed up at the state convention a number of months ago, which I thought was interesting, that Raj did not make an appearance.
Adam Bunkadeko was there.
He was there too. That's right. And now look, obviously they got slaughtered in the vote amongst the state committee members, but there was some chatter among the committee members that Raj did not show up.
If you're drinking the Kool-Aid around either of these two candidates, you're trying to sell yourself on this idea that, if this is a repeat of Zoran Mamdani taking out Andrew Cuomo, but to me that is wrong on so many levels. One, DiNapoli's not unpopular the way
not
Cuomo
scandal
is.
plagued.
It's not that
as he told the New York Times.
It's not that he's not unpopular. I think I've said this last time. He's not known.
Sure.
It's hard to be unpopular when no one knows who you are.
So there's that, and there's also the fact that the issues that they are talking about do not seem to resonate with people anywhere near the Zoran Mamdani mayoral issues.
They're not salient.
Can I sell you on unclaimed funds, anyone?
Well, it's not only that, and for people, and it's very, very few people, but for those very few people who are paying attention to the actual substance of this primary, it's interesting. You've got Tom DiNapoli, who's making the case that the pension fund needs to be a sort of non-activist, very well managed, very intelligently managed fund on behalf of our retirees and future retirees. And the opponents are arguing that there should be this highly activist sort of attitude brought into the management of pension funds. And I think for those sliver of voters who are paying attention to that conversation, including, by the way, public employees, that's an argument that is not winning over, even if the union leadership and they're all supporting Tom DiNapoli. To the extent that there was any opening to win over some of those public employees who are among the only folks paying attention to the actual debate on the merits, that's not a winning argument for that cohort of people. That you're going to turn our pension fund into this climate activist type of fund, and if I'm one of those pensioners, I'm like, I just want my pension to be there when I retire. This is not the space for that type of activity.
I think the magic wand when it comes to the pension space would be if they had underperformed for year after year after year, and you could point to the taxes has gone up historically at the local or state level to pay the difference in the pension fund, and then maybe you get more of a drumbeat from local government leaders and maybe even the unions to have a more solid and less tax-reliant pension fund. But, no juice left in this wand, I guess. Alex, is there another race that you'd like to turn to?
I have two more things. So one's a more broad thing. New York City, New York Times in the kind of roundup of all the congressional races had a couple throwaway lines on this, but I think it'll be very interesting to see in some of these primaries where WFP falls with their candidates, specifically the Antonio Reynoso and Claire Valdez race, versus kind of the new left of DSA, Zoran endorsed candidates. I think if you look on the Twitterverse, everyone seems to be tweeting about Claire, but all public polling has this race in a dead heat. And I think it's really close. Antonio Reynoso definitely starts out more known. He's been around for a while, and yes, borough president is not something that you have all this power with.
Probably come with your own set of like ribbon cutting shears.
You have a lot. You get a lot of free press. You get to deliver a lot to the community, and I think this is going to be a really, really close race. It'll be interesting to see how it's played out.
Let me pose a question to you two. So
no, we're not playing Stonehenge.
So you've got Brad Lander, who's I think in a romp in a few weeks. Probably win by 20, 30 plus points.
Oh boy, my Kalshi bet. That's not good.
Is there anything that Dan Goldman could have done to have any kind of shot to win this race if you can go back in time a number of months?
Not endorse Andrew Cuomo?
Well, sticking with...
Does Lander then not run, though? And then it's competitive?
If there's some way that he proactively clears the field so that he's not seen as vulnerable and that there's not this appetite to take him out, maybe that. But I think... the Lander repatriation effort seems to have a certain amount of juice to it, so maybe Goldman was never going to be safe.
Right. I'm doing the interviewing now, by the way.
Do you have any other questions?
No.
I like doing that. That's perfectly happy with that. In the Reynoso Valdez seat, is there anything then that you wish you could wand away or wand into existence?
So I know I've gone back and forth on money. In the last quarter, Reynoso actually raised less money not only than Claire Valdez, but Julie Wan, who's the third candidate here. I think, if I'm Reynoso, if you start out with more name recognition in a district that is probably more left-leaning than you are perceived, it's pretty hard to keep up your profile when you are spending less money than two other candidates. Right now, that is the case in that seat. So if I was Reynoso, I would either hope to raise more money or hope outside spending would begin to benefit my behalf.
I want to turn to SD 61, which is incumbent after 5 seconds on the bench, Jeremy Zellner against Assemblymember John Rivera. And if I'm John Rivera, what I want is some sort of issue to run on right now, because he seems to be trying to do the Sean Ryan playbook of, hey, this guy is basically Carl Palladino Jr., and that worked for Sean Ryan. It is clearly not working or resonating in Buffalo this time around with Jeremy Zellner, and I think John Rivera needs a reason to be running. I think he needs some sort of pitch to be talking to voters about some sort of issue. I don't know what that is in Buffalo. Maybe it's Josh Allen for quarterback for life or something.
Well, they're both voting on the same stuff right now, so you can't really offer a distinction there. Right?
Exactly. And so I don't know what it would be. Maybe there's some sort of local thing, but I think he wishes he could manifest an issue that could seize on other than this guy is an insider who's close to Carl Palladino. And would you like to say anything as a Jeremy Zellner?
I think we just voted on something to do with the Buffalo parking authorities. Maybe one of them wants to take a strong stand for or against the parking authority. It's a good point. We all just voted on the same budget. As far as I know, neither of them voted against any meaningful parts of the budget. And the attempted criticism of which you rightly pointed out was very effective in Sean Ryan's mayoral race, not so effective here, in my opinion, because those contributions, as I understand it, that are being criticized went to the Erie County Democratic Committee, the county party that Jeremy Zellner is the chairman of. People, especially a primary electorate, where you're more informed, you're more attuned, people understand that the county committee is supposed to fundraise from a lot of diverse, different sets of people.
Sure.
You're not one singular person. You're not a candidate, and those donations do not reflect your personal views. If you're the chairman of a county party, if you're the chairman of the county party, I want you to fundraise from as many people, deep-pocketed and otherwise, as possible, so that our actual candidates have the resources behind them that they need in the general election to get across the finish line. So that criticism, I highly doubt lands in any kind of meaningful way. I think Jeremy Zellner has done an exceptional job. I'm biased. I'm a colleague. I happen to like Jeremy Zellner a lot as a new colleague. I think he's done a fantastic job right out of the gate, serving his district well. I have nothing against John Rivera. I don't know him well at all, but Jeremy, I think, has done a phenomenal job so far as an incumbent. in those 5 seconds.
One of the interesting things is it's hard to take out an incumbent when that incumbent hasn't been around for too long, which is kind of a different way of saying what we've been saying, right? It's
Do you get an incumbency edge after 3.5 minutes?
You get institutional support that you wouldn't normally get.
You have a platform.
Right? There's a reason.
Press conferences.
Not to speak for the senator, but also there's a reason the senator is probably with him, right? Because he's a colleague. There's other institutional support that he probably wouldn't have gotten, right? And obviously other reasons, but it's hard to run against the record of someone who's not been there for a while, and we're in a period where people want change, right? And it's hard to run against change for change when you haven't been there that long. But all to say is the Assembly member has a lot of labor support behind him. Mm-hmm. Buffalo's still a labor town, labor city. It could make the difference at the end of the day. I think this will be a close race.
What about that idea more broadly, though, of candidates who don't necessarily have a reason to run? They don't have an issue that they are necessarily pushing. I think about right now NY13, Adriano Espaillat. I don't know what his selling point is to voters. Reelect me because here's the issue I'm fighting for, whereas they have a challenger who clearly has XYZ positions. I mean, do you guys see that as an issue if you don't have a clearly defined reason for why you're running?
Well, look, I think this is a challenge for a lot of members of Congress, given how dysfunctional and broken Congress is.
Do you think it's a unique problem for Congress compared to Senate or Assembly?
We pass 1,000+ bills every year in the state legislature, and as you know, and actually both of you know, and I've said this to Alex a number of times, he's sick of hearing this. I used to want to be in Congress. If someone on a silver platter, gave me a congressional seat today, I don't think I'd take it. It would take me 10 years to pass a bill to rename a post office if I were a member of Congress. I'd be losing my mind.
But that Nancy Calhoun post office is pretty nice.
So if you're a member of Congress going back home and facing the electorate, whether it's a primary or a general, what do you say? Now, if you're a Democrat and a general, you talk about Trump, right? You talk about how we need to save democracy, and these are all real things, by the way. You're looking to light a fire under people. But in terms of the activity of Congress itself, if you're an incumbent, what do you say? Reelect me because of all the wonderful things that we did? You have H.R. 1, which is deeply unpopular. So what do you tell voters?
I do see, though, at the state level, candidates who maybe have a tough time articulating why they need to stay here. And I wonder whether they benefit from the fact that there isn't necessarily an anti-incumbency mood across both parties more broadly. Or maybe you think there is an anti-incumbency mood.
I think there's a deep mood for change, just generally. And sometimes that takes the form of an anti-incumbent sentiment, but sometimes it doesn't. But I think fundamentally people are looking for change. Now, I think an incumbent can campaign on change. And look, that's something I've leaned into frequently in my cycles. I'm, as we all know, not a sort of what I'd call a go along to get along sort of state senator and an incumbent. And that, for a lot of people, sort of checks that box of, okay, he's not just going to be stale up there. He's going to speak his mind. And so when I say change, people know that the systems are broken. And by the way, I talk about how there are elements of this place that are broken. There
was a whole speech last year, I think.
There was. I vaguely remember that. But people understand when government's not working for them. And I think that is where that sentiment is rooted right now. And it takes the form of, well, I want someone who's going to change that. So people are in the mood for change. People want to fix broken government.
Any other races you guys want to talk about?
5 seconds afforded to the Josh Riley Republican primary between Peter Obrocker and Alex, I think his last name's Pirioli.
He's in my Facebook feed.
Yes.
He's always complaining.
Yes, I think this is actually another. I do think Senator Obrocker will win. I think it will be close. There's also under that a primary for the state Senate seat that overlaps between Chris Tague and Tracy Bernardo. Tracy is working with Alex. I think there's actually a lot of undercurrents of anti-establishment Republican going on here, and I'd keep an eye on that race.
What about SD 13?
Which one is that?
That is incumbent Jessica Ramos.
Oh.
If I had a magic wand and I was Jessica Ramos, I would want some friends to go to bat for me I would want to be able to say, hey, look at my colleagues in the legislature who want me to come back. I think that would be helpful.
You want to take this one, Alex?
I'll say this is that I live in the district, and so far, obviously I'm very tuned in to New York State ledge politics. I've gotten 3 mail pieces from Assemblymember JGR and nothing from Ramos. So I would say at this point, if I was an uninformed voter, all the communication has been from the Assembly member.
Is Hiram Montserrat on the ballot?
Yes, I do see his posters in a lot of storefronts.
He keeps trying.
Well, as someone who didn't have the pleasure of
I never served with him.
Serving with any of the Four Amigos, are you kind of like, hey, maybe we should give this guy a shot? Maybe we can see what all the fuss is about.
I do not. I am not.
Well, before I let you both go, you both seem so natural chopping it up together. I mean, do you envision this as a future working relationship with, I don't know, the DSCC or whatever? How do you guys feel together, good collaborative work?
I think we should make this a standing podcast.
Okay.
That should be the partnership we focus on.
Well, we were going to save a spot for a future DSCC chair and just have them come on and just recurringly talk about stuff.
I'm not running for DSCC chair.
Not running for DSCC, and I'm not running.
You're not. It's true.
I'm not. Anybody else?
I have no idea who's running for DSCC chair.
No
one's running for DSCC chair.
Yeah.
There's no campaign.
There's no primary.
There's no
primary.
election.
If you had a magic wand.
So I'm not running for DSCC chair.
I think we should come on and roll the tape post primary. See how we did.
Yeah.
That would be a good bit post.
And we'll get Cooney and Gennardis to make their own predictions in the future. But for the people who are here, let's thank them. State Senator James Skoufis, an Orange County Democrat who routinely outperforms the top of his ticket. Senator, thank you so much for making the time.
My pleasure.
And Alex Elmasri, the Vice President of Growth and Operations at Parkside, right? That's all it's called. What's the other one? Park Strategies?
There is a Park Strategies.
Yeah, it's tough.
They just do lobbying, I think.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Alex, thanks so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Senator Michael Gianaris.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Leader. I don't know how many people get to see a glimpse of what their funeral service is going to sound like.
That's right. It's there.
I think I just have, so thank you for that. Most people don't get to respond, but I do.